BIONICLE, The Legend Reborn. Written by Greg Farshty. Recording by Nemetron. Chapter 6. "I don't believe it," said Kina. Her thoughts were a jumble. There was excitement, relief, and surprise that someone had actually come to their rescue. There was puzzlement. Where were Akar, Kresh, Tarix, and the others? Why had Matanui come alone? And there was fear too. She knew what Matanui had let himself in to do, and she worried about what might happen to him in this nest of sand snakes. "Neither does Tuma," Berix replied. That might have been true, but if it was, Tuma was careful not to show it. The Skrull chief radiated power and confidence as Matanui approached.
"I'd hoped all the Glatorian would come," he said, "but it seems they're even bigger cowards than I thought."
Matanui ignored the jibe. He marched up the ramp that led into the arena, paying no attention to the chained Voroks on either side of it who tried to claw at him, or the laughter of nearby Skrull warriors. Tuma reminded him of someone else he had known in his past, so full of belief in his own might. Beings like Tuma, he knew, drew their power from the fear they provoked in those around them. Confronted by someone who felt no such fear, they often crumbled. In the cage, Berix gave a little wave to Matanui as he passed underneath. "Is he?" he began. "Alone," Kina finished for him. "I'm not sure I want to look." Tuma turned to look at the crowd of Skrull and Agori. Gesturing toward Matanui, he said,
"Either he's a madman or he wants to join the winning side."
He turned to look at Matanui, an evil grin plastered on his features.
"Which is it?"
Matanui walked right up to Tuma. The Skrull leader towered over him, but Matanui was not intimidated. He looked Tuma in the eyes and said, "I am here to fight for my friend's freedom, one-on-one. Unless the leader of the Skrull is a true coward." Anger flashed in Tuma's eyes, but his tone of voice stayed amused, even a little bored.
"I'm going to enjoy tearing that fancy mask from your face."
Before Matanui could reply, Tuma lashed out, landing a solid blow and sending his opponent sprawling in the sand. The Skrull and Bone Hunters cheered wildly. This was going to be a good fight, if a short one. "Hey! No fair!" yelled Berix. "Dirty, cheating Skrull," Kina said. Tuma wasn't letting up. He brought his huge sword down hard on Matanui's shield. Matanui rolled away and got to his feet, but Tuma was on him in an instant. The Skrull leader struck again and again, battering Matanui around the arena at will. Tuma was enjoying this, but some part of him wondered, could it be this easy? Why wasn't this Glatorian fighting back? Above, Berix covered his eyes with his hands. "Oh, I can't watch. Matanui's getting shredded." No, don't you see?" said Kina. "Watch. He's doing what Akar taught us. Study your opponent. Find his weakness." "Well, he'd better find it fast," Berix replied. In the arena, Tuma was feeling more confident than ever of victory. He wasn't even bothering to keep his shield up anymore. This Glatorian was broken, too much of a coward to even raise his sword in defense. He was certainly far from being a worthy opponent for the leader of the warrior Skrull. But perhaps he could be a chew toy for the Voroks after Tuma was done with him.
"Did this pathetic weakling really believe he could bring down the mighty Tuma?"
the Skrull leader bellowed to the crowd.
"Be careful," said Matanui. "Arrogance can topple giants. Trust me, I know."
Tuma had grown tired of this sport. It was time to end it. He swung his sword in what would surely be the killing blow. But the strike did not connect. Matanui moved so fast he was almost a blur, ducking under the sword and slipping past his attacker. As Tuma's momentum carried the Skrull leader forward, Matanui helped his opponent along with a sharp elbow to the back. Tuma grunted and staggered a few steps. The Skrull leader turned on Matanui, enraged. He swung his sword wildly, but where his blows had never missed before, now hitting Matanui was like trying to strike a desert wind. Matanui ducked and dodged each blow, then took advantage of his opponent's being off balance to land solid shots of his own. Each one rocked Tuma a little more, causing the Skrull chief to slow down just a bit. Faster and more agile, Matanui took full advantage of his foe's fatigue, striking and then backing away before Tuma's sword could hit. In the cage, Kina was so excited she was shaking Berix. "That's it! Tuma's huge, but he's slow. Matanui's using the Skrull's own strength as leverage against him." I get it, Berix said, feeling like she was going to rattle his brains loose in a second. The tide of battle had turned, and even Tuma knew it. With each blow Matanui evaded, his fury and his carelessness grew.
"I'll crush you like an insect," he raged.
Remembering the origins of his shield, Matanui smiled. "Don't be so fast to knock insects, Tuma. Sure, they are small, but their sting can fell a giant. Wouldn't you agree?" Tuma swung at Matanui's head and missed once more. Matanui ducked inside his guard to strike 2 more hard blows. Tuma was exhausted and reeling. Matanui knew it was time to finish this fight. Summoning all his remaining strength, Matanui brought his blade down in a final sweeping blow, shattering Tuma's weapon to bits. Without pausing, Matanui spun, lashing out with a kick that sent Tuma crashing to his knees. Tuma looked up at Matanui, his body teetering for a moment. Then the Skrull leader collapsed into the sand. All around, the Skrull, bone hunters, and Agori gasped in shock. Matanui ignored them, instead reaching down to pick up the fallen Tuma's shield. Raising it high over his head, he proclaimed, "I claim Tuma's shield in victory. Release my friends." In the cage above, Berix and Kina embraced in wild celebration. "He did it!" shouted Berix. "He really did it! Woohoo!" cried Kina. Silence reigned in the Skrull arena now. Tuma was conscious, but too weak to rise. The Skrull, amazingly, had not charged Matanui, perhaps too in shock that their leader had fallen. Matanui still held the shield aloft, waiting for his force to honor the deal he had made with their leader. Then there came the strange sound of one pair of hands clapping and all too familiar laughter. Matanui turned to see Metis standing at the entrance to the arena, Kina's trident in his hand. All around, the Skrull drew their weapons. "I could always pick a winner. Now throw down your shield and your sword," said Metis. When Matanui did not respond, Metis' smile abruptly disappeared. "That's not a joke." Matanui tossed his blade onto the sand, and then gently laid down his shield. There was a flash of light as the shield transformed back into click. "Save yourself," Matanui whispered to the insect. The beetle gave a quick click of his mandibles, and then vanished underground. Metis hurled Kina's trident at the spot where the scarabaeus had vanished, but too late. The head of the trident stabbed into the sand, leaving the weapon sticking out of the ground. "So you were the traitor all along," said Matanui coldly. "Coward!" Kina screamed from above. "Keeping tabs on the Glatorians so you could sell us out to the bone hunters!" "Not a coward," Metis said, smiling. "Just a good businessman." "You were the one who convinced the Skrull and the bone hunters to unite," said Matanui. Metis gestured to the assembled army of Skrull warriors and nomadic bandits. "Of course I did. You think they'd come up with that idea on their own? As rival tribes they did little damage, always having to be watchful of each other. But together, under one ruler." Kina couldn't believe what she was hearing. "You'd lead them against your own people?" Metis spat on the ground. "What have the Agori ever done for me?" Let's see, said Berix. We trusted you? The Glatorian will tear you apart for this, Kina said through gritted teeth. Metis glanced at Kina, then back to Matanui. She still doesn't understand. We are the only ones that know your role in this, agreed Matanui. The other Glatorians still see you as an ally. Exactly, said Metis. And by the time the Glatorian realize it, the battle will already be over. I win. Metis turned to his army. Finish them. I've wasted enough time here. I have to get back to... His orders were interrupted by the sound of bone hunters grunting in alarm. The nomads were pointing toward the desert, their bodies actually shaking with fear. Metis turned and immediately saw why. There was a Glatorian heading for the city. But not just any Glatorian, no. This one shimmered in the sunlight, and was easily 100 feet high. That sight was more than enough for the bone hunters, who broke ranks and raced away in terror. Some didn't even pause to mount their rock steeds, just took off into the desert on foot. "Where are you going?" screamed Metis. "Don't run, you idiots! Fight!" The traitorous Agori pointed at the Voroks, still chained near the entrance to the arena. "Unleash these wretched beasts. Make them fight. If that giant crushes them, so be it." Roused from their shock, the Skrull moved to carry out his orders. Loading their Thornax launchers, they prepared for battle with the giant attacker. Matanui took advantage of his captor's distraction. Grabbing both his sword and Kina's trident, he moved swiftly to the chain that held the cage in the air. With one swift stroke, he shattered the chain, sending the cage crashing down into the sand. The impact shattered the prison, freeing Berix and Kina. Matanui rushed to join them. "Are you all right?" he asked Kina, handing her the trident. "I am now that I've got this back," Kina answered. "Thanks." Berix didn't share her relief at escaping. His attention was focused on the giant Glatorian who was still marching toward Roxtus. "What is that?" Matanui glanced at the giant. In the distance, he could hear a familiar sound, the clicking of a scarabax beetle, multiplied millions of times. He smiled. "I believe, Berix, we are witnessing the true power of unity." The clicking could be heard by everyone now, so loud it drowned out every other sound. Before the startled eyes of the Skrull, the Glatorian dissolved into a swarm of scarabax beetles. With the giant construct gone, it was now possible to see what had been behind it all along. "And loyalty," said Matanui. They emerged from the center of a sandstorm like avenging desert spirits. Tarex, Vastus, Akar, Gresh, and so many more. Glatorian and Agori of every tribe united into one great army. Some were on foot, others in dune chariots and other vehicles. Their weapons ranged from Thornax launchers to rocks and clubs. It was a ragtag force, undisciplined, wild, maybe even suicidal to dare challenge the Skrull. And it was the most beautiful sight Matanui had ever seen. The Glatorian-led army swept into the city, clashing with the defending Skrull in fierce combat. Atop a wall, Matanui, Kina, and Berix saw the battle begin. Matanui handed Tuma's shield to Berix. "Here, you may need this." "Really?" Berix answered, grinning. "Wow, nobody ever actually gave me something before. Can I keep it?" "Only if you survive," said Kina. Seeing the worried expression on the Agori's face, she smiled. "Don't worry. Just stay close to me." "But hold up. Aren't we missing part of the team?" As if in answer, Click leapt from the sand, landing on the tip of Kina's trident. Matanui reached out as the beetle vanished in a flash of light, transforming back into his shield. Matanui's eyes met the single eye in the center of the shield. "Now we're ready," said Matanui. Matanui and Kina jumped from the wall, Berix following right after. "Wait for me!" the Agori shouted. Two Skrull mounted on Bone Hunter rock steeds spotted Kina and Matanui leaping down toward them. Before they could fire their Thornax launchers, they had been unseated by a combined attack. Berix, sailing through the air behind them, landed backward on the back of one of the steeds. It immediately took off in a gallop, with Berix hanging on for dear life. The Agori glanced over his shoulder and saw he was headed right for a Skrull. "Oh, what the heck," Berix said, closing his eyes tightly and swinging his shield downward. "No trial?" The shield bashed the Skrull on the head, staggering him. "No treasure?" Berix smiled, already looking for another target. Nearby, Matanui was in trouble. A mounted Skrull had him pinned down with Thornax launcher blasts. He had managed to dodge them so far, but he was running out of room to maneuver. His shield would protect him for a while, but enough direct hits would shatter it. He needed help. It came from an unexpected source. Gresh, tearing across the sand, riding his shield down the dunes. As Matanui watched, Gresh launched himself into the air, flipped, and slammed shield first into the Skrull. The impact knocked the Thornax launcher out of the Skrull's hand. Matanui charged, stabbed his sword into the ground, and used it to vault himself into the air and snag the launcher. As he fell toward the ground, Matanui saw the image of an attacking Skrull reflected in the metal surface of the launcher. He landed on his feet, whirled, and smashed his shield into the Skrull. As the warrior went down, Matanui saw Kina with a mounted Skrull riding after her. He tossed her the Thornax launcher. She caught it and fired in one smooth motion, blasting the ground in front of the rock steed. Animal and rider flew into the air and landed with a heavy thud. Still, the element of surprise could only work against the Skrull for so long. These were trained and disciplined warriors. Regrouping, they surrounded the Glatorian and pressed in. Matanui, Akar, Gresh, and Kina found themselves fighting back to back with their comrades in the same situation not far away. "They have us outnumbered 10-1, said Akar, fending off multiple attacks at once. "More like 20, said Kina. "Yeah," Gresh added, "but who's counting?"
"Let it be 100, said Matanui. "We have the true power. We fight with honor and purpose."
Matanui brought his sword down against the Skrull's shield with such force that the shield exploded into fragments.
"For unity!"
Matanui cried. "For unity!" the Glatorian echoed, surging forward. Matanui battered two Skrull aside, opening the first gap in the enemy lines. Through it, he saw Metis trying to run.
"So the coward flees,"
Matanui muttered to himself. He charged toward Metis, who was climbing into his dune chariot accompanied by two Skrull warriors. Spotting Matanui, Metis shouted to his guards, "Well, what are you waiting for? Destroy him!" But there was no stopping Matanui this day. Matanui slammed into the two Skrull, knocking them off their feet. With each blow, he thought of his lost universe and people. He remembered the evil that held them captive, the same kind of thoughtless cruelty and arrogance that lived in Metis. In his own way, the traitorous Agori was just as bad as the darkness that had overtaken Matanui's universe. The Agori wanted power, and he didn't care who had to suffer for it. Right now, though, all Metis wanted was to put some distance between himself and this battle. He fired up the dune chariot and was about to ride out of the city when he saw two Vorax blocking the way. "Out of my way, you filthy!" The Vorax grabbed the dune chariot and tipped it over, dumping Metis out onto the sand. Before he could get up again, Matanui was upon him, yanking him into the air. "Wait," pleaded Metis. "We can make a deal. I'll give you whatever you want." Matanui lifted Metis higher, so the two were at eye level.
"I have what I want. You."
The mask of life Matanui wore began to glow. He brought Metis closer until the Agori's helmet touched the mask.
"Stop! What are you doing?"
screamed Metis. There was a blinding flash of light. When it dissipated, the Agori was gone, replaced by a hissing serpent with the face of Metis. The mask had done its work well, Martinui decided. Justice had been done.
Now everyone will see you for what you truly are,
Martinui said to the Metis serpent. Behind him, the Skrull were closing in on Akar, Kina, and Gresh.
"There's too many,"
shouted Kina over the din of battle. "We can't fight them all," said Gresh.
"Our weapons,"
said Akar.
"Quick, combine their power."
The three Glatorians stood side by side, their sword, trident, and shield touching. A blast erupted from the combined weapons, air, fire, and water together in one devastating force. It blew the Skrull back, but they charged again.
"They're still coming,"
said Gresh. Martinui vaulted over the Skrull to land beside his allies. He touched his sword to their weapons.
"Now, as one," he said.
Once more they fired, this time with the power of life itself added to their energies. The explosive blast flattened the Skrull attackers. Those few who still remained on their feet fled at the sight of so much raw power unleashed. On vehicles, on foot, and on rock steeds, they deserted Roxtus, leaving the Glatorian and Agori the victors.
"We did it!"
yelled Gresh. Martinui looked into the eye of his shield. "Thank you," he said. There was a bright flash of light, and then the shield was gone, and Click was sitting on Martinui's shoulder once more. Akar looked at the insect and smiled. "And I used to think scarabaks were just annoying little pests," Akar said. The beetle responded with rapid clicks of its mandibles. Akar laughed at the sight, saying,
"Click, I will never doubt you again."
"I can't believe it's over," said Vastus. "And that all of us are still in one piece," added Terex.
"Wait,"
said Kina, looking around.
"Where's Berix?"
"I haven't seen the little guy," said Gresh. Kina was frantic now.
"I told him to stick close to me."
"Kina," Akar said, resting a hand on her shoulder.
"No," said Kina. "He was my responsibility. Berix!"
A muffled voice cried out in response.
"Down here."
The Glatorian glanced to the right. Berix's hand was sticking up out of a pile of rubble.
"Little help here, please?"
the Agori said. Kina rushed over, grabbed his hand, and yanked Berix free.
"You jerk! I thought—"
Then she paused and hugged the Agori tight to her chest.
"Don't ever do that again."
Berix gasped for air in her too tight embrace.
"You know, I think I liked it better when you hated me."
End of chapter 6.